Today we're going to do an underappreciated game from 1996 called Cedric and the Lost Sceptre, which is kind of a cross between Lionheart, Monkey Island 2, and Shadow of the Beast 2. Here it is in motion. Looks really nice, and yeah, you'll notice this bridge is very Shadow of the Beast 2 inspired. So I think the parallax and everything looks really good, so let's look at it, how it all works. So if we put the palette visualizer on, it's only 16 colors. So if we take all the bit planes off, we're left with just the sprites, which is quite a lot. So let's look at how these work. We take them all off. Sprites 0 and 1 are half of the main character, 15 colors. Sprite 2 and 3 are the other half. He's got a lot of cool little animations here. He taps his foot when he's waiting for you. He also gets old. He turns old sometimes because he's impatient. And those first two sprites were also his head that is down here in the HUD. He loses a bit of his head when he gets injured. And then you get what to me is the most interesting part. If you put sprite 4 on, you get the background, but it's not repeating, and it's just one sprite. So it is very similar. If you've seen my video on Brian the Lion, where they do the clouds like this, and on Bubba and Sticks, where they do the background mountains in sprites. So it seems to be a technique that was discovered in 1994 with those games, that you can do a non-repeating sprite background if you only use two colors, because usually the sprites are 4 colors, so 2 bit planes. But if you make them just one color and you have a 16 color screen, there's enough time to change them and repeat them all the way across the screen. So it's too bad that nobody discovered this, as far as I know, before 1994, because the 16 color games were quite common, and you could have had parallax with essentially all of them, which would have been really nice. So if I move a bit, you can see how it scrolls with the background. But one thing you'll notice is that it's missing right here. So if you put in sprite 5, that actually fixes that. So Brian the Lion and Bubba and Sticks didn't need 2 sprites to fill it all. They just needed the one. So I'm not sure why the difference there. If anyone has an idea, please let me know in the comments. It might help to look at the copper visualizer. We'll do that in 1 second. I'll just show sprite 6 and 7 are the moon in the background. So if we go to the copper visualizer, it's sprite number 4 that is the background there. So let's try to find it. So yeah, here's sprite 4 data. Oh yeah, see, he just turned old and has a cane because we're taking too long. And then sprite 5 was the little fixer-upper here, right on the left edge. So up here, right there, we've got sprite 5 data. And then here, sprite 5 data all the way down, the white, all the way down to here, and then also over here. So that might be a clue. Here we also have sprite 5, and then it switches. It's sprite 4 position, sprite 4 data, sprite 4 position, sprite 4 data, all the way across the screen. If you want to know how that works a little more detailed, if you check the Brian the Lion write-up on the Code Tapper website. So that has a really detailed explanation about how it works to be able to get that to write all the way across the screen with just the 2 colors, the 1-bit plane. The other thing you can see in the copper visualizer is just changing color 0 all the way down the copper sky in the background. So if we put the bit planes back on and then check the palette visualizer, the main game screen is just 16 colors. Like I mentioned, it needs to be 16 colors to be able to do that sprite trick. And then for the HUD down here, it's also 16 colors, but they copperize it a bit. These ones and right here. So there's about 78, 79 colors available. And when you check the game right at this point, it's actually using, looks like 77 or 78 colors. So pretty much all of them. So it would just be 4 bit planes because it's 16 colors. So we got bit plane 0, 1, 2, and 3. And if we take those off and then put the sprite visualizer on, you can see all the sprites, and then just that sprite 5 here, and then sprite 4 is all this part. And if you scroll, the game is always at 50 frames per second. It scrolls at 50 frames per second, as you can see. And then if you come up to one of the enemies, like this guy, for instance, I do it frame by frame. So I paused it there and we go frame, frame, frame. So he is 50 frames a second too. So all the enemies and the character and the scrolling. So everything. The only exception I found is when the enemy turns around. So right now he's turning around. So if I do frame, frame, frame. So it was 3 frames there, frame, 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 every third frame. And then once he's turned around and going normally, then it goes back to frame, 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 every frame. If you put the blitter visualizer on, you can see anything animated is blit. The waterfall here, the enemy right there, and then the tiles scrolling in from the left of the screen, and then the enemies are blit. And then also with the copper visualizer, if you look at the purple here, you can see the copper split. So that kind of copper split is often used in games where there's 8 directional scrolling and a big map. So if I scroll a bit and we look at the DMA stats, you can see the copper is taking quite a few slots, probably for the sprites in the background. The blitter, a little bit, CPU quite a bit, and bit planes, not too much compared to most times because it's only 16 colors. And then we've got the red for the audio. So the audio is really good in this game. My computer is a little slow, so sometimes the audio doesn't work great, but let's take a little sample. You've got the famous pan flute that the Amiga used a lot, Shadow of the Beast, for example. So I recommend you check out at least a long play of this game to hear the incredible music. And here's the second level, and you might really notice some Lionheart visual influences here. If we look at just the sprites, you can see the water is also sprites like in Lionheart. So if we take all the sprites off and just hit sprite 0, if you've seen my first Lionheart video, then yeah, it's almost exactly the same how they did the water there with the 3 color sprites repeating across the screen, and then sprite 1 is the other half. But it's not really a secret because they even have a statue later in the game that says Valdine, who is the Lionheart protagonist. So they knew what they were doing. And then for the sprite background, the same thing happens here. Sprite 4 is all the way across the screen, and then sprite 5 just fixes this little gap here. If I put sprite 5, see that with the bit planes back on, you can see it also warps under the water, just like Lionheart does. So the copper visualizer will give us a clue on how that's done. So if you look over here at the yellow, then it's all bit plane playfield horizontal scroll values. So they're changing the scroll value on each line, and that is what is giving the warping effect for under the water. And then for the multiplexed sprites for the water, you can see those move up and down, and it's the white that is positioning them, sprite 0 and 1. And again, you have sprite 4 and 5 up top here. And the trick I like in the background here is that because they have this copper sky that's really dark, it looks like these clouds go down farther, but it's really just to that line. If the copper visualizer, you can see right to here is where it stops, but it gives the illusion that it goes down farther. So it looks nice when you scroll, just like that. So level 3 is where the music really kicks into high gear. Listen to this jazzy sounds for a second. So there'll be some crackling, but let's listen to each audio channel. Here's the snare. Here's the upright bass. Here's the keys. So this is one of my favorite songs in an Amiga game. Premiere by Core Design also has some of my favorite music. I'll have to do a video on that someday. There's lots of levels in the game. The long play takes almost 2 hours to finish. Most of the outdoor levels are set up similarly. If you take the bit planes off here, you can see again that this has a sprite background and sprite water. So in the palette visualizer, you can see how they change the color to blue shades at the water line right here. The game does have one dual playfield level, and it's this one that's sort of inspired by Lionheart 2 and the dragon flying part. So it's in 6 bit planes, and here's bit plane 0, 2, and 4. So this is the front. You go behind the clouds. And here's bit plane 1, 3, and 5, which is the background. So the strips scroll at different speeds, but in a lot of other games, they use the purple move the bit plane pointers to do those. But here, it's right here, the yellow, which is the bitplane playfield horizontal scroll values. So right there it changes, and right there, but then it also moves when you scroll down, it moves up. And it won't let me pause, so the best thing I could do here is freeze it and do the sprite visualizer to show you the sprites. So this little part is attach 0 and 1, then 2 and 3, 4 and 5, and 6 and 7. So that is all 8 sprites. So with OCS, ECS, every sprite is 16 pixels wide and can be infinite height. So here you've got 4 attached sprites for 8 altogether. So that would be 16 plus 16, so 32 and 48 and 64 pixels across. So with all the sprites together, if you want them to be 15 colors, this is the biggest sprite on ECS width-wise that you can get. So it's the equivalent of 2 attached AGA sprites, 64 wide. So AGA essentially has 4 times more sprite power, because it can do 8 sprites or 4 attached, and this would be 2 attached. So this is the widest sprite that you're going to see with this many colors in OCS ECS. So here's the blitter visualizer for this level, and here's the palette visualizer. Here's some more variety of levels. I won't spoil them all for you. I always really like the animation on this guy, very smooth. There's even a mine cart to go down. Woo! So yes, lots of variety. It's a very good game, and I think if it came out a few years earlier and was more widely known, that it would have been regarded very well. But yeah, if you're looking for something to try out, I recommend this game. I had some fun nights playing through it last year with the help of a long play. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe and comment if you can. I always appreciate it and look forward to the comments. So until next time, take care.